Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by
Harry Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Encore Business Group, and Rydan Investments.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.
Stay informed and stay vigilant. Going back into the Honolulu Blue Tent here with Dr. Jimmy Liao, one of our show friends here. Doc, I'm curious about your thoughts on this Anzalone situation, because I liked that you were covering it very, very honestly and with kind of pulling back the curtain a little bit as you do, talking about, okay, this hamstring thing, that's a classic holdout type injury, but it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds here, because like I said, I think the Barnes contract had some fallout with Anzalone, but Anzalone's an interesting case. He's clearly valuable for the defense. He was one of those pieces that when he finally went out, that was when the defense fell apart a little bit. Now, you could say that's an aggregate effect because there were so many defensive players that were missing by that point, but I do think he was a central part of the defense, the defensive leader, a captain, all of those kinds of things. But they also have Jack Campbell getting better. Barnes is waiting in the wings. I think Zach Cunningham has changed the situation a little bit. I think that's part of the reason he wanted to come back when he did, because Cunningham was looking a little too good as a guy that they just picked up off the street in place of him. So I'm curious how you think that's going to go, because I can really see both sides of this one. He's been an important part of this team, but he really wasn't a high-functioning starter until he got to the Lions, and now he's aging. So to give him, but it is an aging body.
I love Anzalone. He's been fantastic for the Lions the past few years. He has been more important and a better player than Derek Barnes the past few years. So I can see from his perspective, he's playing right next to this guy. They're both linebackers. He's standing right next to him. Derek Barnes gets this 3-year, up to $25 million deal. Anzalone is entering his third year of an $18 million deal. I do get his dissatisfaction based on what they paid Barnes, but it's hard to feel like the Lions should do anything here. And I would rather they do not. Anzalone, as you mentioned, he's going to be 31 this year. So just from an age standpoint, definitely getting up there. He still looks great, still looks like he's in his prime. But after the age of 30, at any point, things can fall off a cliff. The forearm fracture he had last year is not an issue going forward. So what should the Lions do? I'm glad that Anzalone returned to practice after this so-called hamstring thing, which I never really bought into. I'm glad he's back in practice. That suggests he's definitely going to play this year. I'm hoping the Lions play it tough with him and make him play out the contract and go from there. We got too many other contracts we need to sign. Too many of the younger players that are higher priority to really be putting too much money into any kind of extensions for Anzalone. And who knows what he's even asking for. If he's asking for something outrageous like $15 million a year, then absolutely they shouldn't be doing it. If he's asking for something much more reasonable, then maybe it is worthwhile. But without knowing what he's even asking for, it's really hard to judge is Holmes doing the right thing or not.
The duality of this is so interesting to me, because I agree with everything that you said. He has been a very key piece. I do think he's performed better than Barnes overall, but there's also the idea that he does have people kind of waiting in the wings to take over for him. And although Barnes has not performed consistently like Anzalone has in as important of a role, I do think that was the hardest linebacker role to fill last year, because they just couldn't find somebody with a comparable skill set. And in the Lions defense, that was a very unique position that it was hard to replicate with Barnes out, which is why he ended up getting that money. And then you have the idea that Anzalone is sitting there saying, hey, I've been a leader for this team. I'm a captain. I've been the center of the defense. And that's all true, but it's also hard to make that argument as you're holding out and kind of making the team suffer potentially by your actions in camp, because ostensibly he's the first one to pull this holdout of this new era Lions team under Campbell and Holmes. So this is setting a bit of a precedent from the guy that's supposed to be the de facto leader on the defense. So the duality of this is very interesting to me.
Yeah, you're right. Precedent is the key word here. The Lions have to be very, very careful with how they handle Anzalone, because they could be setting a bad precedent. They got a bunch of young players coming up. They got a bunch of older good players. They're a very, very good team, so they have a lot of good players. The last thing you want is guys seeing Anzalone getting rewarded for his holding. Next year, that might blossom into multiple guys holding him. So it's a very, very tricky situation with Anzalone.
Arguably the most valuable thing about this team has been the culture element. They've made the collective ability of the players that they've acquired rise. Not that they haven't gotten good players, but I think that culture has gotten the best out of all these players. And so this is a possible chip away at that culture. And I think you bring up a great point, Doc, that this could set a precedent, and that's why it's interesting that I think they're going, okay, yeah, we get it. We know how valuable you are, but I also go back to that contract that he signed that now he wants an extension and he wants an improvement from. A lot of people, even at the beginning of last season, were talking about him I was talking to some contract experts on the show, and they were talking about him as a buyout candidate. They were talking about him as overpaid. And so it's interesting to now turn the attention to this season after he did have the injury-riddled season, should come back healthy from that, but he is a year older and didn't have a full season. It's just interesting from all those perspectives, I think.
I agree. I don't think he has leverage here. He signed his contract just 2 years ago. It's not like he's significantly outplayed it and is some kind of top 5 defensive player of the year kind of caliber player or anything. He's been very good, but it's not like he's drastically outperformed his contract. So it really wouldn't make much sense for the Lions to make an exception for him and readjust his contract before it's up.
Especially with how some of the linebackers have played in camp here. I mentioned Cunningham. I think he's done better than some have expected. I think Stewart has come in and played pretty well, and he's got a special teams value. So I think that's part of what kind of sped him up a little bit and had him come back, but he's still kind of being ambiguous and making the comments at camp and all of that. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out here, but I'm curious if you have your eye on anybody else or who else you find interesting here in the early camp times, whether it's somebody that's injured or somebody you're just expecting better things out of. Who do you have your eye on here?
Let's see. Well, the big one that I was keeping my eye on throughout the whole offseason was Aiden Hutchinson, because of mainly the technique issue. And no one's really addressed this yet with him. I've never seen anybody asking the question with him yet. I wasn't worried about him coming back physically. Very good chance he was going to recover from a pretty straightforward tib-fib fracture. But does he need to adjust his technique on that outside edge rush to prevent a recurrence, prevent that leg whip, that swinging leg gait that exposes the leg to another injury? In practice, he's wearing the pad on that left tib-fib to protect it. It'd be curious if he plays with that during the season. If he's going to play with that during the season, I would suggest that he play with it on both sides, because right now that left leg is fully healed. Those bones are strong. The refracture risk is basically back to baseline. So if he's going to play with a protective pad on that side, you should probably play with it on both sides. That was the main guy I was curious about this offseason.
We need Jeff to ask him that here. We need him to go to one of the availabilities and ask him about that, because I have mentioned it from you to some of the other writers that I talked to on the show, but I feel like Jeff's got to ask him on behalf of Lions Wire.
I agree. I'm going to have to really push Jeff on that, give him a kick in the butt to ask Aiden about that.
I like it. Well, there's a lot more to talk about, but I'm sure we'll have you back on as the season progresses here. I'm excited to cover the season with you, talk about it more because, as you can see from this conversation with Dr. Liao, we obviously focus on the injuries because he has a lot of insight there, but he's got a great mind for football as a whole. So we appreciate you coming on, and tell the people where they can follow all your coverage here.
Follow me on X at Jimmy Liao MD. Last name is Liao. That's where I linked all the stuff I do.
Well, thanks, Doc. We appreciate you coming on, and we'll look forward to having you back on as the season progresses here.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right, thanks to Dr. Liao and our other guests, Greg Gaina, Gavino Borquez, and Joey Williamson. Appreciate them all coming in and on. And appreciate Big G keeping us on track here as he normally does.
Aw, shucks.
We didn't get enough of Big G this time, but I do hear he might be back next week. So hopefully we get a little bit more Big G next week.
Yeah, by the way, Tigers won 5-1 tonight.
Appreciate the update here. See, they're back. See, that's what we're talking about with Greg. Maybe they're back here. Hopefully they're back in stride.
Hopefully they are.
Now that Kerry Carpenter's back, they're back. Their record with him is very good.
Well, Dylan Dingler hit a home run. Andy Ibanez hit a home run just out of the minor leagues, and the young man Melton went 7 shutout innings.
Perfect.
Good stuff.
We'll be following them here, especially with the trade deadline, but appreciate Big G keeping us on track, and appreciate Mom being in studio, and also Rex hanging from the rooftops here wherever he is. We appreciate him keeping us on track as well. Appreciate all the support of the sponsors: Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Rydan Investments, and Encore Business Group. Stay tuned for us next week from 7 to 9, and the Sports Project from 7 to 9 on Wednesday and 10 to 12 on Saturday.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.